Happy Wednesday, Josh Johnson here. A busy weather afternoon and night is ahead for Alabama as a risk of strong to severe thunderstorms brings a threat of isolated tornadoes, damaging wind, and large hail to the state. There is also a chance of some isolated flash flooding concerns. My, how things change from drought to flood in a week's time. Welcome to Alabama. That's why my hair looks like this. Let's get straight to the data here. We would need to time out these storms for you. So overnight data, no major changes, but there are some subtle changes in the mix here that are going to affect the way this all unfolds. So let me back up to the beginning here. This would be around 3 in the afternoon. We start to see signs of trouble. Scattered thunderstorms fire down here in southeast Mississippi around 3 o'clock. Those will then expand towards the northeast. These individual cells are in a warm, muggy environment, but if you do a little more homework on this, the forecast soundings suggest the tornado risk would be a little lower than some of these storms later. Why? Well, the low-level wind fields are really not terribly strong. Your low-level jet is 30 knots. Your low-level directional and speed wind shear is not that strong. So this initial batch of thunderstorms, long story short, I suspect is more likely to be lightning, heavy rain, some pea-sized hail, and some gusty wind. Still not fun, but not necessarily a terribly dangerous set of circumstances with this initial wave. We'll watch and see, right? These things have a mind of their own some days, but that's how I see it, this initial wave. It reaches the Montgomery, Prattville, Millbrook area sometime late afternoon, early evening, and it's scattered. Look, some of you will have no rain at all until after the sun goes down. Then we get this cluster of storms that forms into kind of a broken line of cells running from west central Alabama back into south Mississippi. This is 10 o'clock tonight. Now, at this point, wind shear is maximized, and we can click out here in West Alabama and do a little interrogation of the atmosphere. You'll notice that the low-level winds have cranked up a little now. We're at 40, 45 knots. You have much greater directional wind shear. So, bottom line, you would likely start to see a tornado threat evolve out here in West Alabama around 9, 10, 11 o'clock tonight. Those storms then expand towards the east. This is midnight, and you'll notice, again, kind of this broken line of thunderstorms sagging slowly southward. And here's the challenging part of this now becomes the latest data suggests these storms stall somewhere between Montgomery and Birmingham for several hours, and the line kind of waffles back and forth a bit. And if this scenario comes to fruition, we would probably see some 4, 5, 6-inch rainfall totals in this belt up here, which even with the dry ground, 6 inches of rain in 3 hours is going to cause isolated flash flooding in flood-prone spots. So understand, I think that's one of the changes we really need to drive home here is there is a stronger risk, perhaps than advertised yesterday, of some isolated problems with flash flooding, particularly between Montgomery and Birmingham, wherever that line of storms stalls and sets up. Okay, onward we go. This is 4 o'clock in the morning, and you'll notice the model, if this specific run of this model ends here, you would still have some risk of isolated tornadoes up in this, but by now it's rained in this corridor for several hours. Temperatures have dropped a bit. The wind fields are shifting around to the west, and the low-level shear has really lifted out. So from a tornado production standpoint, my suspicion is the greatest risk of a tornado comes in central, west central, and southwest Alabama with that sort of initial wave or that line of storms that pops into the late afternoon and evening between about, say, 5 o'clock tonight and 11 o'clock tonight, primarily west and northwest of Montgomery. Okay, so what do you need to do with all this information? You need multiple reliable ways of getting weather warnings. You know that already. Weather radio is best. The WSFA First Alert Weather app is a great option as well. We'll be on tonight, however long it takes to walk you through all this. Back to the flood threat here. Look at this. This is data from the Weather Prediction Center. This is not raw model data, and a human being drew this. And look at some of these totals out here. You're talking about a close to half foot of rain, and we may be out of the drought faster than we had thought. That's not necessarily a piece of bad news, but it is news nonetheless. Storm Prediction Center, they have expanded the enhanced risk a bit to include more of our area. There's the broader perspective. Enhanced risk now goes into a big chunk of central, west central, southwest Alabama, central and south Mississippi, and parts of eastern Louisiana. This is a tornado-driven enhanced risk. There's the tornado probability, about a 1 in 10 shot of a tornado within 25 miles of a point. And the hatched area denotes that there's some potential here for an EF2 or greater tornado. The SIG 1 level, kind of a new thing they're doing, but it does get into parts of our area. Let me give you a little clearer look at that. The SPC does a different page here where you can go in and drill this down a little clearer. So this right here is the updated threat map from the Storm Prediction Center. So it's a level 3 risk now, from Grove Hill to Montgomery to Lake Martin to Ashland to Pell City, and points west from there. So right up in here. So that would include Marengo, Perry, Dallas, Wilcox, Lowndes, Montgomery, Autauga, Elmore, Tallapoosa, Coosa, Chilton counties, and points north from there, back up towards I-2059. So then a level 2 risk in yellow surrounds that, back down into much of South Alabama, level 1 risk down to the south. So that's the overall risk of severe weather. That is primarily driven by the tornado risk, which you see here. Again, the greatest risk of a tornado, the area outlined in yellow, that again would be Marengo, Clark, Wilcox, Dallas, Lowndes, Montgomery, Elmore, Tallapoosa, Autauga, Coosa, Chilton, Perry in our area, and then back up north towards the Birmingham metro. Timing this out, my suspicion is that initial wave of storms is more bark than bite. That would be in the afternoon. And then the greatest tornado risk would come during the evening and overnight hours. We'll call it, again, about 6 o'clock through midnight or so. After midnight, the storms stall, the wind shear relaxes, it cools down a little, and the tornado risk doesn't magically disappear, but it does begin to ramp down pretty quickly. And we don't get it to zero, but we get it much lower as the storms stack southward into South Alabama. Then we also want to walk you through what happens after the storms move to the south and kind of time that out for you. That will occur relatively quickly Thursday. This is not an all-day rain and storm scenario here. Let me take you back to the data. This is the 12Z run of the HRRR, and it sags those storms southward. This is 7 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, and you've got some strong storms running from Troy and Brundage, Andalusia, back to Evergreen, Atmore, Bruton. Then this keeps going south from there. By 10 a.m., most of us are dry, the exception being the Florida border counties. And by 2 in the afternoon, this is all gone. So it is not an all-day thing Thursday. It's really more Wednesday night into very early Thursday morning. It's also worth noting, if you live down here in South Alabama, by the time these storms get to you by 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, the tornado danger is dramatically lower. I mean, you've got a very unidirectional wind field. See how all those lines right there are pointed in the same direction? That means the wind's blowing from the same direction from the ground up to the clouds. That's not really a tornado look. Never say never, but the tornado threat really tails off south of Montgomery pretty considerably, especially after midnight. So that's the kind of lay of the land here. Let's do a little more data diving. This is the HRRR, which is going to be retired soon and replaced by the RRFS. Now, my experience with the RRFS is that it tends to overbait thunderstorms a bit. So it shows them a little scarier than they actually end up being. So when you look at this, what I want you to do is just sort of focus on the idea here. Not necessarily the specifics, but the idea here is, as we get into the late afternoon, mid-afternoon, we see some storms fire in South Mississippi and Southwest Alabama. Those then move east. By 5 to 6 p.m., we're watching them carefully. Then it sort of congeals into a line or two lines of storms that slowly works its way south into early Thursday morning. And again, the data will look different here. This is a different piece of data, but again, listen to my words more so than look at the map there. That's the idea. Scattered thunderstorms that are mainly wind and hail producers in the afternoon and early evening, mainly in west and central Alabama. Then a line or two of storms that slowly pushes southward through the night. By sunrise, most of it is in far south Alabama. The rain ends from north to south. By 10 a.m., the central counties are dry, and by 2 in the afternoon, the southern counties are dry. So when you look at it as more of a narrative and don't necessarily just watch the data and think it's the gospel, the narrative is the same. The details change, but the narrative is the same, which is the main tornado threat is 6 to midnight from Montgomery west and north. The tornado threat is not zero anywhere in our area, but it does lessen as we get deeper into the night and as the storms sink more to the south. There is also an attendant risk of flash flooding in this due to some very heavy rainfall totals getting in the mix. I know that's hard to believe being in a drought, but if you live in an area where it doesn't drain very well, low-lying area, pasture land, dense clay that doesn't hold much water, those kind of places, understand you may deal with isolated flash flooding into the night ahead. All right, I'm live on WSFA 12 News tonight at 5, 6, and 10. I will also be spending the night. It's a spend-a-night party at WSFA tonight. And Nick Gunner will join me early tomorrow morning. We'll be tracking these storms for you as they zip across the state. More updates to come throughout the day and the night. We'll get through all of this, I promise, and the nicer days are ahead. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. We'll talk soon.